Hi there, this is John Fazio with NBC Camps, and excited to bring to you a webinar live interview with Coach Damion Jablonski of Whitworth University men's basketball. Had the chance to get to know Coach Jay, as they call him, over the last 10 years or so. He has helped out at our NBC Camps. Some of our programs that we have in the summer often comes and speaks to our campers just about their journey in the basketball world. Just a little bit about Damion before we get started. He's been involved with Whitworth basketball for the last 9 years. He took over as the head coach this year for the first time, and obviously what a weird year to take over the reins, only to have the season cut a few weeks short. The Whitworth Pirates made it all the way to the Sweet 16 before coronavirus shut down all athletic events. So it would have been really interesting to see how far they could have gone there this season. But doing a little research, Coach, too, it looks like you guys have won over 200 games in the time that you have been involved with the program, which comes out to 23 or 24 wins per season. You only play about 26 or 27 games, so that's a huge high winning percentage that you guys have been able to maintain over the time that you've been involved. So congratulations on all the success. But could you start off by just giving us a quick overview of your journey in college coaching?
Sure, you bet. Yeah, no, we've been fortunate at Whitworth. Obviously, our program's been built many years before by previous coaches and players, and in this last decade, we were actually the winningest program in Division III over from 2010 to 2020. We were about a .85 winning percentage, which was a lot of fun to be a part of for the 9 years or 8 years of that I was a part of. But getting to my journey, I probably a little bit non-traditional. I went to school, got an engineering degree from Gonzaga, ended up getting a job at Ford Motor Company in Metro Detroit. And I was working there, but really missed the game. Basketball's always been my passion. My dad was a coach when I was young and growing up, so I grew up in a gym basically. And I really always wanted to be a coach, but didn't necessarily know how to go about that. And really because I thought about doing the practical thing of getting an engineering degree. But I started coaching on the side. I started first volunteered and then was a JV and varsity assistant at a high school a few minutes from my house in Metro Detroit. And after doing that for a few years, I was kind of, I don't want to say burned out, but I just felt like automotive engineering wasn't my passion. And I was still young enough at the time that I thought, I could jump into trying to make basketball my full-time endeavor. So I quit my job and worked a bunch of camps throughout the summer and went into pretty much every basketball office in Metro Detroit until I finally got an opportunity as a graduate assistant at Oakland University, which is in Metro Detroit. And it's Division I school there. We were in the Summit League. They're in the Horizon League now. But so I got on there, worked my way up, was a video coordinator. We had a great run there, ended up becoming an assistant at Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Before Matt Logie, who I worked with as an assistant as well, took the Whitworth job and asked if I wanted to come with him. And it was a great opportunity to get my family back out to the Northwest and be a part of a program and a university that, really fit me personally and provided an opportunity to really have a lot of success. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's awesome. And fast forward to 2019-20 season, what did you learn in your first year as head coach?
Oh boy, lots of things. Obviously, I had my own team, at the high school level, but it's been a decade plus. So just getting back into the head coaching mode was a small transition, I guess, but still lots of things to learn and feel out, especially being at the college level now in the head coaching spot. Some of the things it took a little bit, just I think, going through the cycle. It probably wasn't until December when we probably had a half dozen games or so under my belt that I really felt like I was starting to hit a stride. And ironically, that was actually one of the rougher times in our season. We took a couple of L's during that time, but I was getting more comfortable just having gone through things, the first time through with your team, even just getting through, your daily practice plans, and trying to be deliberate about what you have and what you're putting in, and if it's the right time and how you're going to do that. All those things just take a lot of time, and I'm not expecting that it won't, but I'm hoping that as you become more seasoned, things like that become easier, and you can fall into a better routine. So I learned some of those things. I think one takeaway was once I got through, being comfortable with the administrative stuff, then I could get back to the relationship stuff. I think early on in, say maybe October, November, I didn't get to do as much of that because I was putting so much time into the practice plans, into the scouting reports, into just being prepared as a coach. And obviously, I think the relationship building and building trust and rapport with your players, even though these are players on our team that I've had relationships with, I'm in a new role. And, I think that's one of the things I learned, just reiterate, I knew it, but just how important that is to have those relationships. And that's the huge part of coaching.
It's awesome. I know that you've done a ton of camps over the years. Previously in your role, you did a ton of player development there with Whitworth. And I just thinking about some of our campers and people that attend our programs, do you have some thoughts on what some of the more noticeable deficiencies you see in young players coming up?
It's hard to pin it, say, on one skill or another. I think the most obvious thing is that most players think they're working hard, but they're really not working at the level that it requires if they want to continue, if they want to go on to a college career, if they want to, if they're not in a starting spot but want to be in a starting spot, if they're not on their team but want to make a team, whatever the next goal is. A lot of people want to do things, but don't necessarily know how much work it actually takes, or just aren't as realistic about how much they're actually putting in. So I don't want to say it's a fault of the players, but that's one of the things I try and help them be aware of. And also, one of the things at Whitworth, that it's great when you have a great culture and you're around a lot of great, hardworking players, then you get a better picture, because a lot of players look around and they think they're working hard because they are working hard compared to the people that aren't working hard around them. So that's probably one of the main things that I try and impart on players at camp, is just how much it actually takes. Another thing, I think a lot of basic skill development, a lot of fundamentals is very, very important. And while you're doing that, then on top of that, you have to figure out things that then can be incorporated into your game. And I always say it's like putting tools into your tool belt. Like, now, once you've got some fundamentals, and you should always work on them. Steph Curry's still working on his fundamentals every day, and he's at the highest level possible. But once you're working on those, then you're trying to figure out how do you incorporate those skills into your game. So that might be certain ways to get open on the court, certain ways to protect the ball and get the ball in the right spot to be able to pass by someone's hip or someone's ear. It might be actually using a dribble move to create a little bit of space, or actually applying that finishing move. When do you actually apply that finishing move in the game? So I think the application, and that takes a while. You maybe don't, when you're young, you don't really think about it. You just play, which is great. And then at some point, usually when you're into a high school age, especially, you start really thinking about how you apply them to, what you do when the clock is running.
Yeah, that's great. Good insight. So let's say I'm a high school player and I've got a chance to play at the college level, and the Whitworth Pirate coaching staff is out recruiting. What kind of things, obviously, just overall performance and their ability to execute in game situations, but what kind of, maybe the lesser known things are you looking for when you're recruiting a player?
Yeah, it's tough because some people obviously can just play better than other people, and so that's something that's subjective that we as coaches, work evaluating every day. But some things that are important to me when I'm watching a player play, whether it's with their high school team or club team or whatever, what kind of effort they put in. If they're really giving a good effort all the time, what kind of attitude they have. I want players that are competitive, but I also, there being competitive, sometimes you can also be overly emotional, and that's not necessarily good. It's important in our program that you do have the skill to be able to pass, shoot, and dribble. I mean, those are basic things that very rarely do we ever bring a player in, just based on athleticism or just based on one of those skills. So you really do need to be able to pass, shoot, and dribble. I think, so how they behave, what their character is, what their overall ability is. I do think shooting in general to college coaches is a premium. I mean, in the end, you want to put the ball in the basket. And, it's not to say that we wouldn't recruit a player that was just a defensive stopper, but you probably need to be able to put the ball in the basket and be a defensive stopper, at least to a certain, level. You have to be able to do that. So I do think the skill of shooting is really important for any player to work on and perfect and spend a lot of time on. And then you're doing those other things. Like once we get them here, and you want to actually play for us, you need to be able to defend. You need to know what we're doing on the, offensive and defensive schemes, and you need to be able to take care of the basketball. Some things that I might not like to see when I'm evaluating a player that's overly emotional, a player that doesn't take care of the ball. Those are things that would be negative ticks, when I'm doing evaluating. And maybe if you just don't have an awareness of what's going on around you, and that's difficult to tell a player how do you become better at just being aware of basketball, but that's about playing. That's about watching the game. That's about studying, good players and good teams and just spending time.
So, right. Developing that IQ, right?
Developing that IQ.
Yeah, that's great. And you kind of already alluded to this, but, I think often young players think that college and pro players are doing something a lot different than the fundamentals. And you had mentioned that every level works on the fundamentals. So I guess what's the biggest difference as you increase levels? I go from a middle school player to high school. I mean, obviously people are getting bigger, faster, stronger. I mean, is that what you can expect would be the biggest difference as you continue to evolve up the playing ladder?
Definitely, yeah, bigger, stronger, faster is the most noticeable, the speed of the game. And basketball is about decision making. So now if you're having to make all of these decisions at a quicker rate, it's like it's like going on a Sunday drive and then getting in, the Daytona. Like you got to make decisions a lot quicker. Yeah. So I think that's generally the transition that especially freshmen almost always notice. I think, you talked about the fundamentals, and we do work on team fundamental things, especially as warm-ups and that kind of thing. But when you get to a higher level, that work, there's less time in team practice that's dedicated to that, even though we still do some. And there's a lot more ownership by the players themselves to get it work in outside of the practice time. Ben College, who played for us, just graduated, was an All-American for us and is the second all-time leading scorer in Whitworth history. He get up 1,000 makes a week on the regular, outside of our practice. Wow. And that's what it takes to not only develop that skill, but then, he's had it. It's maintaining it. He's doing that to maintain it. So guys get in, and he's also doing, ball handling drills. He's also, doing other things besides just shooting. But the amount of work that you have to put in to those fundamentals, is in your responsibility a little bit more too when you get higher and higher. And that's why you see guys like Steph Curry and pro players, have those routines where they're still doing fundamental things as part of their day-to-day.
Yeah. A question that would maybe be geared towards some of the coaches listening, but how did your playing career impact the way you coach?
Yeah, so my highest level was at the high school level. I obviously I had desire, I had dreams to, play at higher levels. When I got through the small town, Montana basketball career, I wasn't a recruited athlete, and um, not to say that I might not have been able to, seek something out, but it just seemed like that was going to be a difficult thing for me. So some of the things I think I take away, I have some more maybe empathy or understanding of some of those guys that are just trying to put it together with the lights on, because that was probably my biggest thing. I didn't consistently do that in my competitive career, not to the degree that I thought I was capable of. And the mental game is huge. Confidence is huge, and just playing and not thinking is really important. And so I think that's one of the things that I try and incorporate into my coaching is, we want guys to be able to compartmentalize. When we're learning, you're thinking, and then when you're playing, you want to have developed those skills and that understanding to a point that you don't have to think as much when you're playing. And that's one thing that I think maybe my playing experience helps me in my coaching, is that knowing that I was a guy that overthought things, at times. And so, I try and be deliberate about helping our players not do that, or not feel like they're forced to, feeling like they can play with some freedom. But again, it takes reps and skill development to be able to do anything without thought. You have to put the time in.
For sure. One thing I really love about your coaching personality is your openness and willingness to seek advice and wisdom. I've even spoken with guys on your staff that said you're constantly coming to them, asking for their opinion, asking if they're seeing anything different. I think that's a pretty neat quality. Obviously, some coaches get plenty successful just doing it their way all the time and not really branching out. But what's kind of motivated you to take that stance?
I think some of it might just be my background in general. I mean, engineering is really about problem solving, and so I like to always be trying to solve a problem. And you don't necessarily our problem is changing all the time. The game changes, which players you have to work with change, what your opponent is changes, the rules of the game sometimes change. All of those things are changing. So in my opinion, you have to continually be evolving. When I first got into high school coaching, I would go to every clinic that I possibly could. And I do, I've done a little less of late, but shoot, with this quarantine stuff, it's been pretty amazing. Even stuff like this, the content that's been out there for coaches to learn from. I love, especially right after the season, to spend honestly the next 2 or 3 months through the summer, just like coming at, reading new things, listening to speakers, just watching film, trying to come up with new ideas that we can incorporate into what we do. And again, it's part of that's just the problem solving, but I think you know having that growth mindset, it actually, I like it a lot. That's one of the things that I just like about coaching. It's like a creative process. If you're a musician, and you spend a lot of time playing your instrument, or using your voice or whatever, like, I think you can relate. You go through periods where it feels like you're just grinding, your wheels, and then all of a sudden you have an inspiring moment, and you just rattle off this song that you can't even explain where it came from. I feel like coaching is like that too, and so I want to get as much input as I can, and help myself find that inspiring moment, if that makes sense.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. As we kind of wrap up here, I was just thinking about the different type of people that might view this interview, and whether it's a kid who's in middle school or high school, or a coach. Obviously, circumstances have been tricky the last month and a half or so, but what encouragement would you give to, number one, players that are stuck at home right now, and then number two, coaches that aren't able to maybe do what they're accustomed to doing?
My encouragement is that whenever there's an adversity, right, the people who persevere, the people who are adaptable and find the good they can get out of, the situation that they're in, those are the people that are going to be successful. And we're all in a disadvantaged situation of some sort. But if you look at it the other way, which is, oh, wow, now I have time to view all this content. Now I have basically no excuses. If I'm a player, my excuse might be that I don't have access to a hoop, but pretty much every player's got a ball and some surface that's flat enough to dribble on. So, or a sibling or a mom and a dad who will pass the ball back to you. So you can work on a lot of other skills. You can work on your shooting skills without a hoop. There are ways out there to work on, just your form shooting. So my encouragement is everybody's in this boat. If you're going to if you want to be successful, then you need to find a way to be adaptable and make the most of it. If you come out on the other side and you haven't progressed at all, then you missed an opportunity. So coaches the same way. Again, there's so much free content out there right now, so much accessible with the internet. For sure you can get a lot of ideas that you might not have had before. And again, for players, there's so much more, there's a lot of time to work on these skills. And so don't make excuses, but be adaptable and make the most of the opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. Coach Damion Jablonski, thank you very much for taking some time today to impart some of your wisdom and advice to our players and coaches. Thank you for your long support of NBC camps. We're thankful for you and your program, and good luck with this downtime. Good luck as you eventually get back onto the court and start looking towards next season.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet.